Hey there, you guys. So, it is now the end of June. We have this thing every time where I'm like, another month has passed, and I don't know how. So, yeah, I guess it's been an okay month reading for me. I finished 5 books this month. However, 2 of them were for school, and one was a graphic novel, and the other 2 were rereads. So, did I really finish 5 books? Yes and no. So, I finished, technically there's 3 new, but 2 of them were for school, and one was a graphic novel. So, that's beside the point. Let's get into what I read this month, and overall, it was a fairly good month. So, the first 2 that I'm going to talk about are my 2 plays I had to read this month for my Shakespeare class. The first being Henry V by William Shakespeare. I gave this one, I believe, a 3 out of 5 stars. It was okay. It wasn't great. It was a lot based around Henry V and the war and the Battle of Agincourt and things like that they were okay, but it was definitely an older play. It's there are certain older plays that are not as enjoyable as others. So Henry V I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Sorry, excuse me. My allergies right now are through the roof. The second and the other Shakespeare play that I read this month was Hamlet by William Shakespeare. I actually really, really enjoyed this. Hamlet overall it was an easier story to read and kind of understand for me personally. And then on top of that, I was able to watch a really great adaptation that Royal Shakespeare Company did back in 2010, I believe, 2009-ish era, where David Tennant played Hamlet and Patrick Stewart played both Hamlet's father and his uncle, who then becomes his weird stepfather. Hamlet's a strange story, but I felt like it was a lot easier to understand and analyze Hamlet and his behaviors, and it is one of the longer plays we've had to read so far this semester. I think the only other long one that we still have yet to read is Macbeth or Twelfth Night, but I can't remember. They're not as long as Hamlet. Hamlet is a bit of a beef in comparison to the other plays we've read so far this semester. So, but I just felt like overall it was an easier story to digest and enjoy. I believe I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, because I just enjoyed the story better. Then the next 2 books that I read were Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins, my reread in prep for Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is the new prequel book that I've talked on and about, and I'm sure you've heard many, many things about from everyone else in the booktube community. Or non, because everyone loved these books before booktube really existed, so it's awesome getting to understand a new book that other people are also excited for that aren't booktubers, which is really exciting. So yeah, rereading this, gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, obviously. Really enjoyed rereading this after so many, many years. This was one that I did reread quite a bit still in school, because I reread Hunger Games so many times over I can't even remember, and then watched the movie over and over again as many times, because that was my middle school years, was The Hunger Games and Percy Jackson. And towards the end of middle school, early high school was Divergent, but Divergent wasn't as great. But yeah, so it was a really nice jump back into this world and to this story and the ups and downs of Catching Fire and how 75th Hunger Games works and has so many twists and turns, and the love triangle, and it's as good as I remember it being. Then the fourth book, the next book that I read this month was Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins, the third and final book in the Hunger Games trilogy before this next book. I enjoyed reading this book so much more than I think I originally did. I think reading it as an older person, in her early 20s, versus reading this as a 14-year-old in middle school, even 12-year-old if I read it earlier. I don't remember when this book came out in comparison to how old I was. But it's such a different story to read when you're older, and to see the struggles of these characters. Now, there are so many other awful things happening in these books, that reading them during a pandemic and during the state of the world that we are in right now is a little hard to swallow, a little difficult, because there's a lot of comparisons that can be made between this series and our world right now. But we won't get into that because that's not what this channel is for. But it was just a more eye-opening experience reading it as 8 years older than I was when I originally read this story. On top of that, I also enjoyed the film versions of Mockingjay so much more than I did when they first came out. In addition to enjoying them more now, I had never seen the part 2 version of the film. I had watched the first part probably like a month or two after it came out on DVD. I watched it. I got the DVD and watched it at home and hated it. I don't really remember why I hated it, but I did. And so then when the second part came out, I was like, I'm not going to see it in theaters. I'm just going to wait till it's a $5 book or $5 movie and pick it up so that I own the whole collection, because why not? But then, I just never watched it and never got it because I just stopped caring and got tied up in every other thing that involved high school and things like that. So I just didn't really care. And then, no joke, probably 2 months before the pandemic hit and before shutdown happened, I had finally gotten around. I'm like, I'm just going to order on Amazon, and just so that I have it so I can watch the whole collection. Also in preparation for knowing that I was going to do a reread of The Ballad of Songbird, or reread the trilogy in preparation for The Ballad of the Songbirds and Snakes, the prequel. And so I knew, I was like, okay, well, then I'll want to rewatch all the movies and finally watch this one. And it really helped reading them so close to when I had read them. So like I read the book and then I watched the movie. I read the book and then I watched the movie. So it was very close to analyze, and I'll talk about it briefly here, but if you guys would be interested in my comparison between the two, I would be more than willing to do that. I was really enthralled in the comparisons myself the past week or two, and it was just such a new experience reading them and then watching them so close together, because I never really did that when they were coming out originally. And overall, the adaptations are very, very faithful to their story, to the original plot line of the books. So I think that is something that is abnormal for films a lot of times, and the changes that they made made complete sense for the film industry, which I am more relaxed in viewing since I did my own adaptation senior year. I watch film adaptations in a different way than I used to, in that I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense as to why they did that, because why are they going to bring in this brand new character that no one knows who they are, and we don't really have time to tell you about them in a movie? Well, we'll just throw in this character that you already know and kind of change their role in the movie. it makes a lot of sense for how films are made. And there was no like, oh my gosh, that's so much different than the book. Like everything was actually very, very close. There was really nothing that I had glaring issues with within the stories. But I would love to talk about that more and go in depth for each movie to book adaptation. I would love to talk about those sorts of things in a video if you guys are interested. So let me know down below if you guys would enjoy it. And then the fifth and final book that I read this month was The Son of Neptune, graphic novel by Rick Riordan, adapted by Robert Venditti. Again, I think I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I enjoyed it. It was pleasant to read and take in this story in a graphic novel form. Still not my favorite way to indulge in these stories. Does not mean I will stop reading them, and does not mean I will stop collecting them and adding them to my bookshelves. As you can see behind me, they're full. And I am getting 2 more tomorrow. Don't know where I'm putting them or what's going to go on them, but it's happening. So, doesn't mean I'm going to stop collecting them. If they keep making them for the rest of the books, I will still purchase them and add them to my collection because I like seeing them all together. And I really hope they do, because I would love to see the visual looks for the rest of this series, especially. They go through such a wide story arc, and especially once we get to House of Hades, it would be so interesting to see the drastic differences between the points of view and see how they would do that in graphic novel form, and how they would tell the story of the above world versus Tartarus and that sort of thing. So that would be really interesting to see how that sort of story would change, where the first 2 books, and even Mark of Athena, they're all in the same spot, and we're just seeing the progression from different points of view. So it would be very interesting to see how the graphic novel would change for House of Hades, with it being in 2 separate locations. Spoiler if you haven't ever read the books. I should have put that at the beginning. But it's not really, you don't know what I'm talking about. If you've never read the books, read the books. So anyway, that's it for this video today, guys. Next month is going to be crazy, because July is the July Alphabet-thon, where we try to read the whole alphabet, and Reading Rush is in July. So July is going to be a bit of a madhouse, but you will see that and my massive, insane pile of books when you see that video in a few days down the road. I'm about to film it myself, so I'll be seeing it right now. You guys will be seeing it in a couple days. I'll say it here, and I'll also say it in the July TBR video. I will be uploading a separate video for Reading Rush TBR down the road, closer to the start date of Reading Rush, which is the July 20th through the 26th, Monday through Sunday, same as it always is. They have 7 challenges. I'll be talking about all of those things and all those details and what books I'm going to be reading for them, and doing all of those things that rely on those challenges closer to the start date of the readathon, because between now and when I film that video, I may have read the books that I was originally planning on reading for the Reading Rush. So I don't want to make any plans as to what I'm going to be reading for those challenges until we get closer to, because things may change. Anyway, that is it for this video today, guys, and I will see you guys all in my next video in a little bit. Goodbye!